Well, thank you for the kind introduction. As he said, I am Lieutenant Colonel Glaspell. And what I'd like to talk to you about today are the impacts of obesity on recruiting and retention in the United States Army. And so obesity has become an international health crisis. The trend could have dire impacts to our all-volunteer force. And 21st century leaders must adopt fresh approaches from pre-recruitment, recruitment, through accession and initial entry to the end of a soldier's service to mitigate this problem. So what I'd like to talk about is the problem, give you a little bit of background and the scope, the implications to the Army and to the military in general, and then my recommendations for mitigation, which I'm going to acknowledge up front are going to be, some of those will be hard to implement, and success may be difficult to gauge. So the problem, obesity prevalence. There are 500 million obese adults in the world, and that's projected to reach 1 billion by 2030. U.S. obesity prevalence doubled between 1980 and the early 2000s. It flatlined a little bit there, but it's on the rise again. And this condition affects males, females of all ages, racial and ethnic groups. And it can increase the risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, certain cancers, and a whole host of other health issues. And the trend among children and adolescents is particularly concerning because this is our targeted recruiting pool. Obesity has increased 3 to 4-fold in children and adolescents between 1980 and 2010. And it's estimated that 33% of children are classified as obese. And that's projected to possibly reach 50% by 2030. There are a number of causes for this, but I'm just going to highlight a few. Heredity. If one parent is obese, a child is 2 to 3 times more likely to be overweight. And if both parents are obese, a child is 15 times more likely to be obese themselves. Stress and sleep deprivation. Both of these are recognized as catalysts for weight gain, and both are on the rise among children. And sedentary activity and screen time. Children and adolescents are recommended to have 60 minutes of physical activity a day, with 30 minutes of that being structured. Every extra hour of TV increases obesity risk by 2%. And most children average about 4.5 hours a day of television viewing. Add an additional average of 2.5 hours a day of computer and video game consumption, and you're up to somewhere around 7 hours a day. And while they're doing all this, they're consuming unhealthy snacks and sugary drinks, and they're getting exposed to more unhealthy snacks and sugary drinks on the commercials that they see on television. And COVID has exacerbated it all. Adding another 5 hours of screen time a day, physical activity has dropped by 10%, and financial instability and social distancing have intensified stress. So just to give you a visual, you can see where we were in 2000 based on the scale on the right, where we progressed to in 2020. And it's projected by 2030 that obesity prevalence will rise above 50% in 29 states and be no less than 35% in any state. So what are the implications for the all-volunteer force? So we'll start with recruitment. The United States military needs to recruit 150,000 new members a year. The Army is the biggest customer for these candidates, accounting for almost half of that number. There are approximately 34 million 17 to 24-year-olds in the United States, the target age group. 71%, or 24 million, are ineligible to enlist. And of that 24 million, 59%, or 14 million, are ineligible due to health issues and physical fitness, with the other big contributors being criminal records and mental health. And once a soldier is assessed and goes to initial entry training, obesity continues to have impacts. A 2011 study estimated that 15 to 35% of men and 38 to 67% of women would be injured during initial entry training, mostly musculoskeletal injuries. And a 2021 review of 11 U.S. Army studies conducted between the year 2000 and 2019 determined strong scientific evidence that obesity is a significant risk factor for these injuries. And it continues once a soldier moves on into their career. From 2002 to 2012, active duty soldier obesity prevalence increased from 18 to 15%. And it's estimated that 30% of soldiers do not complete their first tour. Soldiers with a BMI greater than 34 and 30 or above is considered obese, were 47% more likely to leave the Army in the first year and 67% more likely to be medically discharged in their first year. 4,500 personnel were discharged in 2008 for failing to meet weight standards, and it cost the DoD $183 million in training and recruiting costs. And a 2007 study determined that overweight and obese service members lost 658,000 workdays a year due to absenteeism, costing the DoD another $103 million. And so just to give you an example, this table with the recruiting mainly into a session of kind of the scope of this, the column on the left shows the top 11 states with the lowest median recruit fitness from 2010 to 2013. The middle shows that they accounted for 36% of soldier accessions in 2019. And by 2030, their obesity prevalence will be above 50% in all of them but Florida, with 6 states approaching 60%. And so what are my recommendations? So first of all, I want to start by saying we call this a wicked problem. And we won't know if our investment is having an impact for years to come. And even then, it might be hard to gauge. So for recruitment and accession, my recommendation is that we leverage the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, and specifically the National Youth Sports Strategy. The NYSS promotes partnership and workshops to develop accessible youth sports opportunities. And one of the challenges that the NYSS identified was training for coaches and recruiting and retaining volunteers. My recommendation is that DoD should incentivize military personnel to become involved in local youth sports programs. They would provide role models as coaches and have the organizational skills to excel as sports program administrators. And this will be particularly effective with National Guard and Reserve service members because they are widely dispersed in more diverse communities compared to active duty personnel who are consolidated on one installation. Another challenge that the NYSS identified was lack of funding. Now, this one I might be reaching a bit, but the President's Council cannot provide grants. Its activities are limited to promoting interest and awareness of healthy lifestyles. And if that could be changed, sports activities and facilities could be expanded, providing structured sports access to more children and adolescents. Now, there's one initiative of the President's Council that I avoided. The other major program that they have is providing resources to schools and physical education teachers. I steered away from that one because it's been mentioned to me that guys like me getting involved with schools, especially middle schools and grade schools, may be perceived as a backdoor recruiting endeavor and an attempt to get our hooks in children at a younger and younger age. So I hesitate to recommend that approach. My next recommendation is to leverage junior ROTC programs. There are currently 3,500 junior ROTC programs, with 1,727 of those being Army programs located in every state and DoD schools worldwide, with an estimated enrollment of 530,000. In 2021, the DoD provided $428 million in funding to those programs, and the Army accounted for approximately half of that. But there are more than 30,000 secondary schools in the United States. And in 2020, the National Commission on Military, National, and Public Service recommending expanding the number of junior ROTC units to 6,000 by 2031. And these programs already have an integrated physical fitness, physical education, and health as part of their curriculum. They sponsor the annual National Junior ROTC Fitness Challenge Championships in Daytona Beach, Florida, as well as numerous regional and local fitness competitions. And so my recommendation is that these JRTC programs need to be expanded more quickly with a further emphasis on physical fitness and health. My third recommendation is formalize recruiter fitness and nutrition programs. The Army currently only offers online materials to promote physical fitness and nutrition to recruits. Recruiters are conducting physical training and nutrition advice on an informal and voluntary basis. The British are currently conducting a pre-basic training program for recruits that are showing promise, and the Army tested a similar concept with some success in the early 2000s. It focused primarily on physical fitness training. The DoD should provide formal training, equipment, and funding to recruiters to help potential enlistees with weight loss, nutrition, and fitness. And then my last recommendation, I want to highlight up front, is probably the toughest to implement and probably will be the least popular. But I felt we had to do something to help our soldiers that have gotten into their careers and now are struggling. So I recommend mandatory nutrition training and healthy food access for current soldiers. We currently conduct a long list of mandatory training for issues that the Army considers important. They include suicide prevention, sexual assault and harassment, equal opportunity, daily physical fitness sessions, and many others. These are all augmented by resources and support, some at the unit level that soldiers can access. Although access to resources for nutrition and stress management are available, a soldier needs to seek it out unless they fail to meet the required weight standards and are enrolled in the Army Body Composition Program. And so I recommend mandatory nutrition and stress management training at regular intervals to expose soldiers to methods and resources supplementing mandatory physical fitness training. And then here's a tough one. The Army traditionally serves unlimited quantities of high-fat, energy-dense foods in dining facilities to provide active soldiers with plenty of energy. But many soldiers are not that active in the garrison environment. Now, healthy options are available in most installation dining facilities, but they put the turkey sausage right next to the pork sausage. And I have to admit, in that 2 seconds that I have to make a choice, I usually take the one that tastes better. Also, if I don't like the main entree, I can always get a cheeseburger and onion rings in the adjacent line. Installation food courts are dominated by fast food. I recommend further limiting unhealthy options in dining facility menus, and for every fast food establishment in the food court, you have to offer a healthier option. And I acknowledge that these last recommendations will be unpopular and probably very aspirational on my part. So there it is. It's a wicked problem, and achieving results will be difficult to do and even more difficult to gauge. But I think retired Lieutenant General John Bednarik said it best. This is not an Army problem. This is not even a joint problem of all the services. This is a national issue tied to the security of the United States of America. Thank you.